Welcome back to Sands of Salzaar. This video is going to be the first in a series that covers legacy points and the legacy system. In future videos, I wanted to talk about different ways to increase your point limit, but for now, I thought it would be best to just start from the beginning and look at the different ways that you can spend your points. Let me just make a new game and get our character set up. The class you pick at the start doesn't really change the legacy system, but there is one exception. Nameless characters are designed for more experienced players, and the legacy system works slightly differently for them, because they don't have a base class. In general, I'd suggest reading character details and picking a class that melds well with your playstyle. Typically, I pick Knight Errant class, so I'm going to go with that again today. Before I get too carried away, let me explain what legacy points are. Legacy points are used to unlock rewards that you start with at the beginning of your game. You can start with more points by completing achievements during your playthrough. Your legacy score is the highest legacy score you've ever achieved, not the total sum of points you've accumulated through your playthroughs. For example, if I got a legacy score of 100 in one playthrough, and then on my next playthrough my score was 150, my legacy points would be 150, because the points don't accumulate, it just takes whatever your highest score is and uses that as your legacy points. Legacy rewards are split in 4 different categories: skill, item, squad, and settings. Below them shows how many points you've allocated to each section, and at the bottom you have a comparison between allocated points versus your total points. For most characters, the skill page gives you the opportunity to pick up an ability that isn't normally part of your repertoire. While most of these skills cost 25 to 50 legacy each, there's also Nameless exclusive skills that cost 80 points. Although you learn these abilities, you still need to use your skill points to actually use them. Okay, let's pick some of these skills to see what they look like in game. Note that the 25 and 50 point skills aren't available to Nameless characters. Likewise, the skill pages at the bottom that cost 80 points each are only available to Nameless characters. As you can see, the legacy skills I picked before are now on a different skill page, and I can unlock them using my skill points. I'm going to make a Nameless character real quick just to show you what their skill page looks like. Just a side note, if you're playing Nameless, you can access the Nameless blade that gives you an extra 120 points. So for each class we picked on the legacy page, we've unlocked their skill tree for 80 points each. Okay, let's move on to the item section. This one's pretty straightforward, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but there are a few things I'd like to point out. Although it says it grants favor, it actually gives you a talent point. I'm not sure if this is a localization issue, or if it just hasn't been implemented into the game yet. Sherpa increases your bag limit by 1. Normally you can pay an NPC to increase this though, later on in the game, so keep that in mind when you're deciding whether or not it's worth it. The next 4 are all resource packs. The more points you sink into them, the more resources you get per point. I generally tend to stay away from these because they don't really benefit you past the early game. If you're the type of person with an aggressive playstyle, you might also want to ask yourself if you want to be walking around with all that gold in the early game. Potions are always a solid investment. These are consumables that increase your character's stats. If you have the points to spare, I always recommend taking a few. If you want to unlock and level all your skills, you're definitely going to need wisdom crystals. Unfortunately, to get these with your legacy points, you're going to have to finish the MSQ. You can get them from a few encounters in game, but they're sort of time gated, so there's not really an efficient way to farm them. Let's move on to the third category, squads. Most of these characters are recruitable throughout the story, but being able to get them on your side before a major faction takes them could be a massive advantage. Having any healer with you in the early game could be a massive boon to your combat abilities, but not only that, Reek and Yusuf bring additional utility to the party with their White Rose shop ability and their weekly health potions. Even if you can't afford to get them with legacy points, I'd definitely recommend trying to get one of them on your party. Astrid and Princess Balin are both capable fighters, but unless you have a particular attachment to one of them, I couldn't recommend spending 100 points on them. Goldie, Lotus and Amira, on the other hand, are some of the best companions you could get your hands on at any stage in the game. These three have access to the merchant tree, which adds so much utility to your party. Although their carriage store normally just sells food, it's been a lifesaver for me a few times when I ran out of food in the middle of nowhere. The business opportunity in traveling merchant merc might have some potential going forward, but it's not really something I use at the moment. The traveling merchant option gives your companion 30,000 ultar and sends them away for a week. When 7 days is up, they'll come back with 20,000 to 50,000 ultar. Although statistically over time you're set to win, the fact that you lose your companion for a week, and there's also the risk of losing some money, means it's not really a favorite for me. The expand your network option sends your merchant to a town or village to get a trade permit from them. Just like the traveling merchant perk, you lose your companion for a week, but it is good use if you want to slowly work towards getting all your trade permits. So those are a few perks of having a merchant on your team. Again, you don't have to spend your points to recruit them, you can find them out in the world. Once you understand the reputation system, getting followers in this game really isn't that difficult, so I don't normally put points into this category. That being said, maybe you have a specific playthrough idea that requires you to have a companion from the start, in which case, go ahead. That leads us to our last category, settings. The difficulty option is unlocked by completing the main story quest. As you can see, it increases a hero's level cap, which means you're going to be going up against stronger enemies. It also grants enemies 30% extra health and 20% extra attack. That being said, it also increases the quality of your gear. You can use this option to get extra legacy points. Troop limit increases the total amount of troops you can have in your party, while Hero at Arms increases the amount of companions you can have. I find these skills especially useful in the later game when I'm trying to siege enemy fortresses. The next option lets you gain favour with any of the 5 major factions. Depending on the goals of your playthrough, this might be a reward worth considering. Lastly, we have the Nameless Blade that I already covered in the first section. This option gives Nameless characters the ability to spend an extra 120 legacy points. That covers all the legacy rewards. For me personally, I like to use Troop Limit, Heroes at Arms, and whatever points I have left I put into potions. If you've just started playing, you might only have 60 points to work with, but regardless of how many you have, I'd still recommend looking at these 3 options. That pretty much sums up everything I plan to talk about. I know this video might have been a bit of an information dump, but thanks for sticking around. Next video, I'm going to start earning some legacy points by making my way through the legacy bosses. Feel free to join me.